Today, I'm going to show you how you can use Shopify's customer account UI extensions and Gadget to build an application that allows customers to report issues with orders that have been fulfilled. Hey y'all, so I'm actually just going to be extending one of Shopify's own tutorials, their menu action extension tutorial for customer account UI extensions. They have a little stubbed out piece of code that tells you to send the reported issue to a server. Gadget does have a hosted and scaled Node.js backend that is serverless, as well as a database to actually store this reported issue on the order. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and set up. Gadget also has built-in customer authentication that makes sure that the requests coming from the extension that is using Shopify's new customer account system is authenticated. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, I'm gonna get started building my app now. I'm gonna go to gadget.new. I'm already signed into Gadget, so it brings me right to this app type selection page. I'm good with Shopify. I'll click next, and I can enter an app domain. I'll call this report order issues.gadget.app. Enter to get started, and this gives me my new Gadget app. So that's going to be a fully hosted and scaled Postgres database, Node.js backend, and React frontend powered by Vite. And my entire app is going to be serverless. I'm going to start by connecting to Shopify. So because I want to use the customer account UI extension, because I want an embedded front end, whether or not I want customer public apps, I need to go through my partner's dashboard. So I'll just pop that open now. And I will create a new app and create one manually. We'll call this report order issues again. And I'll copy my client ID and secret back to Gadget and then continue with my connection setup. There we go. So on this page, I select what Shopify API scopes and data models I need to include in my app. Now I can always edit this later if you're not sure up front. Always come back and change it. I know what I want for this app because, believe it or not, I've built this one before. I'm going to go ahead and select my read orders scope and my order data model. So what happens when I'm selecting the scope and data model is that we are going to be subscribing to Shopify's webhooks for you. So you can see when I selected my order model, I subscribe to all of these webhook triggers. That means whenever something happens in Shopify, we're going to go ahead, get that webhook notification in Gadget and keep your database up to date. We also provide you with a historical data sync, so I can go and pull all of my pre-existing orders. Orders has a bit of a caveat because you need to request special access and use a specific scope for orders that are older than 60 days. So this will get me 60 days or 2 months worth of orders. We also have a nightly reconciliation job that runs, so if any webhooks are dropped for whatever reason, whether it's Gadget or Shopify or something in between, we'll go ahead, fetch that missing data, everything will be up to date. I also need customer read access, and we have this built-in customer account authentication. I'm going to go ahead and check that, and this is actually going to generate a custom role in our permissions page that I can use to grant customers making requests from within my extension access to my API. And when I check that, it also automatically selects the customer model. So I'm happy with this. I'm going to go ahead and press confirm and move on. Now I need to go ahead and request access to protected customer data in my partner's app. And I need to copy this app URL and redirection URL into my partner's app. I didn't think that through, ended the sentence the same way twice. That's okay. Let's go to partner's app. I'll start with protected customer data access. Go to the API access tab, protected customer data access. Let's go ahead and request. So only apps that are distributed on the App Store need to submit this access for review. So I'm just building this as if it were a custom app. So I'm just going to go ahead and select app functionality, press save. I'm also going to go ahead and select app functionality for the email field. That'll just be for my customer data model. It just makes it a little easier to identify the models visually in my data table. That's the only reason I'm doing it. I don't need this access otherwise. I'll go back to my configuration page And I'm going to copy my app URL and redirection URL. Save and release, and I am ready to install my app on a store. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll select one of my development stores. I'm going to select the good old test with sample data, just because I know there are some orders that I've made recently within that 6-day window that I'll be able to report problems for. So I'm going to install my app. Don't have to write any OAuth code. Gadget's going to handle all that for me. Gadget will also handle session tokens and app bridge setup in the front end. So what I'm about to see here, this is an embedded React front end in Shopify. App bridge is set up, session tokens are managed. I'm good to start building my custom app now. So you can see this page is powered by route/index.jsx. If I go back to Gadget, I see I am successfully connected. I can close this. API is my backend, web is my front end. So if I pop and open my web front end, routes, index.jsx, this is the page that is actually powering this experience right now. So first off, I can see that I have my Shopify order data as well as my Shopify customer data model. So if I just pop open order, take a peek at the schema, these are all of the resources that are available on the order model. There are fields, which are like columns on my Postgres database. And we've also generated some CRUD actions, create, delete, and update. These actions are going to be triggered by Shopify webhooks or that historical data sync. So if I actually go into my settings, plugins, Shopify, I'm back on my connection setup screen. I'm going to go to my install and manually sync data. I can also trigger the sync with code. If you're building a public app, you don't want to have to manually sync. You want to trigger the sync as soon as a merchant installs an app, probably. So my sync is done. So now if I actually go check out my data, what the sync did is it ran this create action. By default, this code is just saving data to the database. So if I peek at the data tab, this is my order data. I should have my customer data. You see, I have emails. I don't have first names or last names because I didn't fill out the name on that customer data access form. But that's okay. I am good to go here. I will just note that with the Shopify customer data model, we actually have a customer account login trigger now. So if customer data doesn't exist in the Gadget database, and an unknown customer makes a request to a Gadget app from within a customer account UI extension, we will actually go fetch that customer's data from Shopify. And the reason we're doing that is because we are relating this customer to the current session. And this is just so we can handle customer multi-tenancy by default. So customers can't read each other's data. It's built into Gadget. It is actually handled by this prevent cross-shop data access function, and tenancy filters applied on our permissions page. We'll take a peek at that in a little bit. So my next step is add a custom data model. I'm going to add a model that can be used to store issues that are entered by merchants and that customers select in a dropdown in the extension page. So I'll just go issue is my model. I'm going to add a description field. Issues have descriptions. This is just a string. We will make it required. I'm going to add an is B2B field. This can be a Boolean. I'm going to set the default value to false, and also, no, I won't make it required. It's got a default value. That's fine. And then I am going to relate this field to orders. And I am going to go and say an issue can have many orders. And the reason I'm setting up the relationship like this is because each order can have one issue, but an issue can be set on multiple different orders, the same issue. So this is just for tracking that. And we'll call this inverse relationship issue on our order model. So that's our data modeling taken care of. So let's create an issue database table underneath the hood. It gave me some CRUD actions I can use to go ahead and update my issue. I'm going to call these from my embedded front end in a minute. And I think I am good to move on. So the next thing I'm going to do is add a bit of custom backend code. I need an action that customers are going to call to actually add an issue to an existing order. So I'm going to go ahead, create a custom action on my order model called add issue. Now, I could do something like this in my update action, but I don't want to give customers full access to that function. So I'm creating add issue that has a much narrower scope. So I'm going to copy and paste some code in here. Watching me write it from scratch isn't super interesting. It's a pretty simple function, and I actually have some stubbed out code that would really enhance this action. So all this is doing by default. The run function in Gadget is great for database level operations. We could actually probably move some of this logic up into the run function if we want. If we just want to associate this issue with an order, this is perfectly reasonable. We can actually just copy and paste this here in our run function. Now, the reason I originally had it in onSuccess is because I have this stubbed out code, and this is stubbing out a Twilio client. So for example, if we want to send some sort of notification to the merchant whenever a customer reports an issue, whether that's an SMS, we could use SendGrid to send an email. We have a Slack notification template we can use to update a Slack channel. Whatever the merchant's desire is when a customer reports this issue, we can do that in onSuccess. So let's keep going here. So all this code is going to do is actually take the passed in issue ID. I am defining a custom parameter issue ID down here. It's just the string. I'm just going to go ahead and link it to the issue on this current order. So because this is an action on my order model, the record is my Shopify order. And I'm using the internal API to update my order because by default, my Shopify data models don't have a public API for them. So if I don't have a public API trigger, so if I go to my create action, or let's just go right to update, for example, there's no API trigger added by default. The connection between Shopify and Gadget is one way. So if I want to update Shopify, I would have to use the built-in API client, check out our documentation for more details, to write back to Shopify. And I could also manually just add this API endpoint if I did want to call this action. I don't want to. It's okay. We have add issue here. It's time to start dealing with permissions and access control. And we're going to set permissions for both merchants who are going to be creating these issues, and then the customers who will select them for specific orders and call this add issue action. So if I go to my access control folder here and click on permissions, I have these two roles. So normally when you connect to a Shopify app with Gadget, you're going to get the Shopify app users role. But because I selected that customer account authentication, I also get this Shopify storefront customers role. And this is going to be the role granted to customers making requests to my Gadget backend from within that customer account UI extension. So my merchants, my app users, I need to give them access to my model, and I just want them to be able to read, create, and delete. My storefront customers need to be able to read issues. They also need to be able to read orders. They already can. There is a tenancy filter automatically applied, so customers will only ever get their own orders, another bonus. And then they need to be able to call this add issue action as well. So that's great. That is all the access control I need to manage right now. This should allow me to build both my embedded app and my extension. So let's do the embedded front end now. I'm once again just going to copy a bit of code, and I'll paste over this index.jsx file. And if I go back here, I'm just going to refresh. We do have hot module reloading built into our front end experience, but there's a 3-minute timeout because everything is serverless. This is my front end. It has loaded up. I haven't created any issues yet. If you've seen our product tagger tutorial or watched the video, tried it out yourself, it may or may not look very familiar. I may have borrowed some front end code. So I can go ahead and add some issues in now. Let's say the item is missing, item damaged. I also have this little B2B checkbox, so I can create a B2B specific problem. So for example, a B2B issue could be delivery is late, something like that. And this will go ahead, create that B2B specific issue. There we go. It gets a nice little office building icon on that tag. Probably a nicer UI you can build with this, but once again, I borrowed a bit of code. That's okay. Let's take a look at the code that's actually powering this experience. So I'm just using Shopify Polaris for all of my front-end components. We're installing that automatically for you in Gadget. We are also setting up an API client for you. So this is unique to your project. It's initialized and imported here into my index route. We're using some app bridge components, in this case, just the title bar, a Polaris icon, that little office building on the tag. And we can use some React hooks. We got to use state hook here. And there are some React hooks provided by the Gadgeting for React package that allow us to interact with our API in a more Reactful way. So I'm just going to scroll down past this little error banner component here, and we can take a quick look at some of this code. So I am just using useState to manage a deleted issue ID. This is just, I believe, for optimistic updates to our UI. Make sure we disable the tag as soon as we click an X to delete an issue. If I create like a fake issue and delete it, it just makes sure it's disabled so it debounces it. Handles any error cases. You can also make it truly optimistic so it just disappears before it's fully deleted. That's totally up to you. I have this use find many hook I'm using to grab my current issues. So this is what is powering this existing issues section. I'm passing in api.issue, that's from my API client, and this is just reading my issues. I get data, fetching, and error. So data is actually the returned issue data. Fetching is a Boolean. I can use this to display a loading spinner. Errors, any errors encountered, I can use this with my handy dandy error banner component to actually go ahead and either display an error to the user or handle it in whatever way I choose. I'm just going to skip over this use action form hook for a minute. And we have this use action hook. So this is actually how I call actions. In this case, my delete action on my issue data model. We also get access to data fetching and error. In this case, I'm just using error. And we get this delete issue function. Now I'm just going ahead. If I search for this, we can see I am calling this function as part of the onRemove action on my Shopify tag component. So I'm just going ahead, passing in the ID of the issue to delete, and it will go ahead and remove it from my gadget database. Finally, went up a little too far here. We have this use action form hook, and I'm using this to go ahead and create new issues. Now you'll notice I'm not managing any of my form state manually. Now this is a very simple form. It's just a simple single input box and a button. Well, there's a checkbox too. Let's not sell ourselves short, but I don't have any manual use state hooks or anything like that. Use action form is managing all of my form state for me under the hood. So when I call this submit function, like I am doing in my form component here on submit, it's actually going to call this api.issue.create with whatever state is being managed by the hook. And we're using control. So you can see there's a controller component that we're passing control into. Controllers imported from our package. And we just need to use these controllers to wrap our Polaris components because Polaris is a controlled component library. So I am passing in description. That is the name of my field on my model. And that will be the field that is managed by the below component. In this case, it's just a text field. That's the input box. And we have in the connected right, which gives us this checkbox and button here, we have another controlled component for my checkbox. We're passing in is B2B, once again, the field name. And in this case, we're spreading out the field props. We're actually spreading out field props in both cases. I don't know why I put these ones down here. Maybe I'll bring it back up with the rest of the text field properties. But what field props is doing is it is spreading out our onChange. So onChange is handled for me, onBlur, value, name. All of this is going to be managed by that hook for me. In this case, checked is the property I named for my checkbox, so I'm just giving it fieldprops.value. So that's my entire embedded front end. This works. You can see we should have data here in my database while we create issues. The is B2B flag is working. We're getting descriptions. I'm now ready to build my extension, which is awesome. So in order to build my extension, I need to do a couple things. I am going to go ahead, add a dev dependency of the Shopify CLI package. So Gadget is a node project. There is a package.json file, so I can add any NPM modules that I am used to using. Any NPM packages that I normally use. What this will do is install that package into my app. And I'm going to do a couple other setup things. I'm going to create a root level shopify.app.toml file. I'm just going to leave it empty for, so it just appeases the CLI for now. And I am also going to create a .ignore file. And in here, this is going to seem a little weird at first. I'm going to go this. So .ignore works like gitignore when I'm using Gadget's CLI tool. So I'm going to use Gadget's CLI tool to pull down all of my project code to my local machine. And I'm going to develop using VS Code from here on out. So the reason I'm pulling it down locally is because I need to build my extensions on my local machine. I need to go like, yarn Shopify app generate extension or yarn Shopify app dev to start up the dev server for my extension. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Here we go. So our CLI tool is called GGT, and this command just will run GGT dev. It'll continue to run in the background as well. So any changes made here in my cloud editor will be synced locally and vice versa. So let me just pop open a terminal. Beautiful. Let's make this a bit bigger. And I will just run this command. So it's specifying the location directory and then my app name, report order issues, as well as the environment. So if I create another tab, go to this kind of unhinged directory structure, gadget/gadget, and then my app is called report order issues. So here it is. I can pop it open in VS Code. And this is my Gadget app pulled down locally. As you can see, I have my API folder with all of my models, including my issue model. I have my web folder with my front end. That's awesome. You will note there are a couple of new things that are added when you pull down your project locally, and that includes some of these TS and schema files. So this enables you to use source control with your Gadget app. We have documentation. I'm not going to go too much into it right now, but this just defines, for example, my Shopify connection, what Gadget framework version I'm using. If I pop open a model, I get this schema file. It details the fields, any validations on these fields, etc. Check out our documentation for more info. So now I've got my project down here locally. I can go ahead and we'll go yarn Shopify app generate extension. I'm going to select my partner's organization that I used to actually create my initial app that I connected to Gadget with, and I'm going to connect to that app. So report order issues. I definitely don't want to make a new app, otherwise I'll kind of have divergent streams here. And I want a customer account UI. I'll select the default name. JavaScript React works for me. You'll notice that this extensions folder has been added to my Gadget app. I get my TOML file. I will get, I forgot to do something. Notice how it removed the package JSON from my extension. I'm actually going to do this. Let's do this. Let's remove this extensions folder for now. I need to go ahead and add a little bit of sugar in my package.json so it respects the workspace and keeps that package JSON in extensions. So let me just flip over here. I'm actually going to go into the Gadget docs and grab it. I'll show you where we can get this. So that's docs.gadget.dev. I'm clicking on my guides. If I go to my plugins, Shopify, building Shopify extensions, the sugar I need, I'm going to switch to the correct version here. So going back, building Shopify extensions, this is what I need. I need workspaces and trusted dependencies. So I'll just pop those into my package.json file. You'll see as I make that change, it's also updated locally. I could have also pasted them in locally here. And let's generate this extension again. So there we go. We're back. Let's go customer account UI again. Create all the defaults. And there we go. So now in my extensions folder, the package JSON is not disappearing. That's great. I need this package JSON file because I'm actually going to install my Gadget Apps API client and another Gadget package in here right now. So it wouldn't have been great if it doesn't exist. So what I'm going to do, change directory into my extension, and then we'll go yarn add, and I'm going to go Gadget client, and then I'm going to enter my Gadget app slug. So that is report order issues. And then I'm going to install a Gadget inked Shopify extensions package. And Shopify extensions makes it easy to make authenticator requests by pulling in the API client and the session token and registering the session token with the client so that all requests made using that client use that session token. That's what enables us to authenticate the customer requests. So that's great. They're both installed. I see that my app has been updated here locally. Just because I haven't shown updates going the other way, I have got my extension folder here. And if I take a peek in package.json, if I can find it, you see this is up to date as well. So that's great. We are looking good. Now I just need to go ahead and manage my extension a little bit. I'm going to start in the TOML file. So I do want network access. That's important because I'm going to need network access to actually make a request to my Gadget app backend. And now I'm going to add another extension target just while I'm in my TOML file. So I will just go ahead and grab this. A little snippet. I could have wrote this from scratch, but easier to copy paste. So in addition to a menu action extension, there's a menu action modal extension. The action extension is the actual button itself that appears on the customer order page, and then there's the modal that pops up after you click the button. Once again, this is following Shopify's own tutorial at this point, so you can check out their version. I'm just integrating the Gadget server part. That means I can go ahead into my source file. I've got my menu action extension already. I will just go ahead and create a new file, menu action modal extension.jsx. Excellent. And now I'm going to paste new code in my action extension and my action modal extension, and then we'll walk through it. So I'm just going to copy first into my action extension. Like I mentioned, this will just be a button at first. Perfect. There we go. And I am going to copy code into my modal extension, and we can walk through it. Perfect. So this should be all the code I need to power my extension. You know what? Let's go ahead and run this and then run through the code. It might be easier with a bit of context. So if I go back to my terminal here, go back to my root, and then once again, yarn Shopify app dev. This will start the dev server for my extension, and I should be able to preview this order page or customer page in Shopify. I am going to select the same store I installed my embedded app on, so test with sample data. And, one more step I forgot. You notice I'm getting errors here. The Gadget client / my Gadget slug doesn't exist. So I copied and pasted code without actually updating my client name. It's stubbed out here. So if I just remove this, report order issues. I need to do this for both of my files here. Now if I flip back, let's restart the show, and we should be good. There we go. That looks a little better. It's much less red, which is usually positive. So I got this preview URL for Shopify's dev console. I can open this up, copy one of these links, and paste it here, and we should be brought to our customer account page. I've already signed in. If you haven't signed in, you might have to enter your email and then enter a code that brings you to this page, just in case you run into that. You also need to make orders under this customer, just as a note. So here are some of my recent orders. Believe it or not, they're all snowboards because I'm using Shopify's default data. And there are two parts to my extension, like I mentioned before, the button and then the modal that pops up. So this is the button piece. Report a problem is what I am adding to this button. If I don't have my extension running, it'll just say request return. But I can actually click on this button, and then I see all of my options for... This actually seems like there might be a little bug in my code here. If I flip over, I thought I changed this, but apparently I did not. Filter is B2B customer. So I shouldn't see my B2B issue. There we go. That's better. So now I'm not seeing my B2B issue. I just see whether or not my item is missing or damaged. And I can go ahead and actually report a problem. And now if I go back into my Gadget app, what this will do, it will call add issue, and it should add the issue to my order. So if I take a peek at my orders, I should be able to find an issue field. And there we go. issue 1 has been registered with this order. So we know that the relationship is in place and that my app is working. It really just depends, what do I want to do now that the customer has reported the issue? That's kind of the custom code I haven't written yet. So flipping back and kind of walking through this code, I'm going to start with menu action extension. This is that button piece, not the modal. So what we're doing here is we are importing that Gadget API client that I foolishly forgot to change the name of previously. We're importing this client from our Shopify extensions package, a React path. I'm importing a provider and a use gadget hook. And then I am using useFind1 for my Gadget Inc. React package. This is included as a dependency of Shopify extensions, so I don't need to explicitly import it if I'm working within Gadget. If you're building your extension in a separate Shopify CLI app, you do need to add this dependency manually, but that detail is in our documentation. I'm initializing my client and then using this React extension that comes right from Shopify to actually set up the mount point or target for this extension. I have split this out into a separate component, and that's so I can use the use API hook to get the session token and set up this provider. So what this is doing, as I mentioned before, registering the session token with our API client so that all requests made using the client now are authenticated properly for customers. Then we have this other action or component here, menu action extension. This is my actual extension component. Most of this code is coming right from Shopify. So this is only working for fulfilled orders. You can only report issues for orders that have been fulfilled. I am getting the order ID. So this is going to run for each of the orders on that page. I'm using my use gadget hook to get my API client and a ready flag. So this ready Boolean will be true as soon as that registration of the session token with the API client is finished. So you can see I'm using ready here. I'm using a use find one hook to just grab the order data here. And I'm pausing that call until my client is ready. So I can actually delay my Gadget API calls until we're set up and ready to make authenticated requests, which is pretty neat. And then I have this use effect hook. Once I actually do kind of grab this order ID that is coming from Shopify, I just go ahead and I make a query against Shopify's customer account API. And this is just checking to see if it has been fulfilled. I've got some error handling right here. Returning null just means the extension won't render at all, so that button won't appear. And I am disabling this button if there is an issue ID. If not, I am changing the text. So you can either report a problem, or if a problem has been reported, it will say report submitted. Moving to the modal code now. This is a bit more involved. You can see we are using use action form again, as well as the controller. Once again, we're setting up the provider and using the use gadget hook and importing our client. So the setup is largely the same. Once again, I've got my gadget UI extension component, getting my session token, setting up the provider, and I am using ready on my call. In this case, I'm using a use find menu. This is where I was missing that little exclamation part to check if I'm not a B2B customer and apply the filter properly. So I'm just going ahead, grabbing whatever issues exist and populating that input modal or that selection box. I've got a use effect. So once I do have some issues, I just convert them to options that I can then pass into that component. And I have another subcomponent here, which is the actual the form itself. If there are no options, so if you haven't actually set any issues, we will still render the modal, but we'll just say, hey, no issues found, or if there's an error, we'll say something went wrong, like contact the merchant. So we still display an error state with this customer account action component, and that's provided by Shopify from their UI extensions library. Last piece is this issue form component. Once again, we're using use action form to manage our simple single input form. We are passing in some default values, and that just populates the first option. And once again, we're using that customer account action. It does have a primary action that is the button that is actually going to submit my form, and then it will close the modal. Secondary action is just for canceling. It'll just close that modal automatically. And we have a form component. We're using that same controller from the Gadget Inc. React package that I'm importing. Once again, this is coming right from the React hook form library. Using issue ID, that is what I am managing, the state I am managing. Passing in control, that's coming from our use action form hook. And then in our render, we're just drawing the select component, and the state is managed for me. And once again, when they click the OK button, report button, it submits, calls my gadget backend action. That work is done, relationship is added in the database, and I can choose to do something else. So that was our end-to-end build. We went through setting up the Shopify connection in gadget. We added a custom data model, a little bit of custom backend code, maybe not everything you need to actually deploy an app that a customer would enjoy, but just a little snippet, a taste, if you will. And then an embedded front end and this customer extension. If you have any questions, please check out our documentation. We do have separate documentation pages on building with extensions and customer authentication and using customer account extensions, so you can check them both out. You can also reach out to me or the Gadget team on our developer Discord. There's a link in the video description. Until next time, I hope you keep building more and coding less with Gadget.